Many people are exhausted not because life is heavy, but because they are carrying what was never assigned to them. Overthinking is often disguised as responsibility, wisdom, or concern, but in truth, it is a silent confession that the mind has stepped into a role reserved for divine governance. When you believe you must fear everything out, you unconsciously declare that the burden of control rests on you. Yet the greatest peace comes when you realize that God is already handling what you are anxious about. Life was never designed to be managed by human anxiety. The human mind is powerful, but it was never created to be the source of solutions, only the receiver of direction. Overthinking happens when the mind operates without trust, when imagination replaces instruction, and when fear becomes louder than faith. The moment you begin to replay scenarios that have not happened, you step out of the present and attempt to rule the future. That is not wisdom. It is self-imposed pressure. When God is involved, worry becomes unnecessary. Divine involvement means outcomes are not dependent on your emotional stability, your mental clarity, or your ability to predict events. What you are stressed about today has already been accounted for in a plan greater than your understanding. You may not see movement, but absence of visible activity does not mean absence of authority. Governance does not always announce itself. It operates silently, precisely, and on time. Overthinking drains energy that was meant for purpose. It consumes creativity, weakens faith, and distorts perspective. The mind begins to magnify problems while minimizing provision. But when you trust that God is handling it, your thoughts realign with peace. Peace is not the absence of problems. It is the confidence that the system governing your life is intact. Rest is not laziness, is alignment. Faith does not mean ignoring reality. It means interpreting reality through trust rather than fear. When you stop overthinking, you are not becoming careless, you are becoming accurate. You are acknowledging that your role is obedience, not control. Instruction will come when it is needed. Provision will arrive when alignment is complete. Timing will unfold according to purpose, not panic. The greatest sign of maturity is the ability to release what you cannot control and focus on what you are responsible for. You are responsible for your character, your choices, your preparation, and your obedience. You are not responsible for outcomes that belong to divine orchestration. The moment you let go, clarity returns. The mind quiets. Direction becomes sharper. Peace becomes stable. God is already handling it. Your overthinking is not helping the process, it is interrupting your rest. Trust is not passive, it is active surrender. When you stop overthinking, you make room for wisdom. When you rest, you allow divine order to work without interference. Let go, not because the situation is easy, but because the one handling it is faithful. Overthinking is not merely a habit of excessive thought, it is often a subtle signal that authority has shifted to the wrong place. When a person overthinks, the mind quietly assumes responsibility for outcomes. It was never designed to control. Authority, by design, determines who governs what. When the mind tries to govern the future, predict every variable, and secure every outcome, it steps beyond its assignment. The result is mental exhaustion, emotional instability, and spiritual misalignment. The human mind was created to receive instruction, not to replace governance. It is a tool for understanding, processing, and applying wisdom, not the source of ultimate direction. Overthinking occurs when the mind attempts to become both the architect and the executor of life. This happens when trust is weakened and fear fills the gap. The mind begins to rehearse possibilities, replay conversations, and anticipate threats that may never materialize. In doing so, it elevates itself into a position of authority that does not belong to it. Misplaced authority always produces tension. When authority rests where it does not belong, the system strains under pressure it cannot sustain. Overthinking creates this strain. The mind starts carrying burdens meant for divine oversight, and the weight of that responsibility begins to crush peace. The heart becomes restless, sleep is interrupted, and joy diminishes. This is not because the situation is too big, but because the mind has taken on a role it cannot fulfill. When authority is properly aligned, peace follows naturally. Peace is not the absence of challenges, it is the assurance that challenges are being managed by the appropriate authority. Overthinking disrupts this alignment by attempting to control timing, outcomes, and reactions. It turns waiting into worrying and preparation into panic. Instead of listening for instruction, the mind becomes noisy with assumptions. Assumptions thrive where authority is unclear. Overthinking also reveals an internal struggle for control. Control often feels like safety, but it is a fragile illusion. The more one tries to control, the more anxious the mind becomes, because it knows it lacks the power to guarantee results. Authority without power leads to frustration. This is why overthinking never produces solutions, only cycles. The mind goes in circles because it is trying to resolve issues beyond its jurisdiction. True authority brings order. When authority is correctly positioned, roles are clear and responsibilities are defined. The individual is responsible for obedience, preparation, and character, not for orchestrating outcomes. Overthinking blurs these boundaries. It causes a person to confuse responsibility with results, effort with control, and concern with wisdom. In reality, wisdom knows when to stop thinking and start trusting. The release from overthinking begins when authority is returned to its rightful place. This does not mean abandoning thought or becoming passive. It means thinking within proper limits. It means allowing the mind to function as a servant, not a ruler. When authority is restored, the mind quiets, clarity emerges, and decisions become simpler. Rest becomes possible not because everything is resolved, but because governance is secure. Overthinking is exhausting because it is unnatural. The mind was never designed to carry the burden of the future. It was created to operate in the present, guided by trust and instruction. When authority is misplaced, the present is neglected while the future is feared. But when authority is aligned, the present becomes productive and the future becomes peaceful. Ultimately, overthinking is a call to realign authority. It is an invitation to release control and return governance to its proper source. When this happens, the mind regains its strength, the heart regains its calm, and life begins to flow in order again. Authority in the right place restores peace in the right measure. Peace is not a passive emotion, nor a temporary feeling that appears when circumstances improve. Peace is evident. It is proof that trust is not merely spoken, but actively functioning within a person's life. When trust is truly active, peace becomes the natural outcome, regardless of external pressure. This kind of peace does not depend on visible solutions, favorable conditions, or immediate answers. It flows from confidence in governance beyond oneself. Many people claim to trust, yet live in constant anxiety. This contradiction reveals that trust in those moments is inactive. Trust that remains theoretical produces no rest. Active trust, however, changes how the mind responds to uncertainty. It quiets internal noise, stabilizes emotions, and prevents fear from dominating thought patterns. Peace emerges not because problems disappear, but because the heart no longer feels responsible for controlling them. Peace is proof because it cannot be manufactured. It cannot be forced through positive thinking or emotional suppression. True peace shows up when authority is acknowledged and surrendered to. When a person truly believes that life is being guided with wisdom and intention, the need to panic dissolves. The mind stops racing because it recognizes that outcomes are not dependent on human striving alone. That recognition is trust in motion. Active trust redefines waiting. Waiting no longer feels like stagnation or delay. It becomes a season of alignment. Peace allows a person to wait without bitterness, to remain hopeful without desperation, and to stay diligent without anxiety. Without peace, waiting feels unbearable because the heart believes nothing is happening. Peace proves that trust sees beyond visible movement and understands that preparation and timing are always at work. Peace also protects clarity. When trust is active, decisions are made from calmness rather than pressure. Fear-driven decisions often create regret, but peace-centered decisions carry wisdom. Peace slows the mind enough to hear direction, to discern what is necessary and what is noise. It filters urgency from importance and prevents reaction from replacing purpose. Active trust does not deny reality. It interprets reality correctly. Peace does not ignore challenges. It refuses to be dominated by them. This is why peace can coexist with difficulty. A person with active trust can face uncertainty without losing stability. Their calm becomes a testimony that confidence is rooted in something deeper than circumstances. Peace also sustains endurance. Many people start well but collapse under prolonged pressure because they lack inner rest. Trust that is active renews strength. It allows perseverance without burnout. Peace keeps the heart from becoming cynical and the mind from becoming overwhelmed. It guards against emotional exhaustion and preserves joy even in demanding seasons. When peace is present, it reveals alignment. Alignment between belief and behavior, between confession and confidence. A peaceful life is not a problem-free life, but a properly ordered one. Peace proves that trust is not just believed in moments of comfort, but practiced in moments of uncertainty. It shows that faith is not reactive, but rooted. Ultimately, peace stands as the visible fruit of invisible trust. Where trust is active, peace must fall. If peace is absent, trust has been interrupted or misplaced. Restoring peace is not about changing circumstances. It is about reactivating trust. When trust is alive and working, peace becomes inevitable, steady, and unshakable. Responsibility has limits, even though many people live as if it does not. When responsibility stretches beyond its proper boundary, it turns into pressure, anxiety, and exhaustion. The truth is simple but often resisted. Responsibility ends where divine control begins. Confusion about this boundary is one of the main reasons people feel overwhelmed by life. They carry outcomes. They were never meant to manage and attempt to control processes that are not within human jurisdiction. Human responsibility is real and necessary. It includes preparation, obedience, diligence, integrity, and wise decision-making. These are non-negotiable roles. However, responsibility does not include guaranteeing results, controlling timing, or managing every variable that affects the future. When a person tries to handle both responsibility and control, they violate order. Control belongs to divine governance. Responsibility belongs to human stewardship. Mixing the two creates strain. Many people feel guilty when they stop worrying, as if releasing control is equivalent to negligence. In reality, it is the opposite. Releasing control is an act of trust and alignment. It acknowledges that while effort is required, outcomes are not self-generated. When responsibility is carried correctly, it leads to productivity. When control is added, it leads to burnout. Burnout is often not the result of working too hard, but of carrying authority that does not belong to you. Divine control does not eliminate human effort, it directs it. When responsibility ends where divine control begins, effort becomes focused and efficient. Energy is no longer wasted on fear-driven speculation or emotional overinvestment in outcomes. The mind becomes clearer, decisions become calmer, and actions become more intentional. A person begins to work from peace rather than pressure. When this boundary is ignored, life becomes heavy. People replay conversations, anticipate worst-case scenarios, and feel personally responsible for every possible failure. This is not wisdom, it is misplaced authority. Divine control governs timing, connections, protection, and provision. Human responsibility governs obedience, preparation, and character. When these roles are honored, life flows with order. Understanding this separation restores rest. Rest does not mean inactivity. It means stability of heart while remaining diligent. A person can work hard and still rest deeply when they trust divine control. They no longer panic when things move slowly or change unexpectedly. They understand that unseen adjustments are often being made beyond their awareness. This principle also protects identity. When people attach their worth to outcomes, failure feels personal and success feels fragile. But when responsibility is limited to obedience, identity remains stable regardless of results. Confidence is no longer dependent on performance but on alignment. This stability produces resilience and humility at the same time. Responsibility ending where divine control begins also restores patience. Patience is not passivity. It is strength under order. It allows processes to mature without interference. Rushing often comes from the fear that nothing is happening, but trust recognizes that control does not require visibility. Many of the most important workings are invisible until the right moment. Ultimately, clarity about responsibility brings freedom. You do your part fully and release what you cannot control confidently. This release is not resignation, it is partnership. Life was never designed to be carried alone. When responsibility is properly defined and divine control is honored, peace replaces anxiety. Endurance replaces frustration, and purpose moves forward without unnecessary weight. Rest is often misunderstood as laziness, retreat, or a lack of ambition. In a world that celebrates constant motion, rest is sometimes viewed as weakness or failure. Yet true rest has nothing to do with quitting and everything to do with alignment. Rest is not the absence of effort, it is the presence of order. When a person rests correctly, they are not disengaging from purpose, but positioning themselves within it. Alignment means functioning according to original design. Everything operates best when it stays within its intended role. When a person ignores rest, they move out of alignment. They begin to rely on personal strength rather than proper order. This is why exhaustion is often a sign of misalignment rather than productivity. Rest restores the correct balance between effort and trust, action and surrender. Rest does not cancel responsibility, it refines it. A rested mind sees clearly, hears direction accurately, and responds wisely. Without rest, decisions are rushed, reactions are emotional, and judgment becomes clouded. Rest protects discernment. It slows the internal noise enough for clarity to emerge. This is not weakness. It is strategic positioning. Weakness avoids responsibility. Rest embraces it without panic. When someone rests, they are acknowledging that outcomes are not solely dependent on constant exertion. They understand that life is governed by systems greater than human effort alone. This understanding produces calm confidence. Rest becomes a declaration that authority is properly placed and that control does not rest on personal strain. Rest also preserves strength. Strength that is never renewed eventually collapses. Continual striving without rest leads to burnout, frustration, and loss of joy. Rest interrupts this cycle. It replenishes emotional reserves and renews perspective. People who rest well often accomplish more because their energy is focused rather than scattered. Alignment through rest also protects identity. When worth is tied to productivity, rest feels threatening. But when identity is rooted in purpose, rest becomes natural. A person no longer feels guilty for pausing. They understand that rest is part of the process, not a deviation from it. It is preparation, not procrastination. Rest is also an act of trust. It requires confidence that things can continue without constant interference. This trust is not passive. It is disciplined. It resists the urge to control every outcome and instead maintains consistency in what truly matters. Rest allows patience to mature and timing to unfold properly. True rest produces stability under pressure. It does not eliminate challenges, but it prevents them from dominating the inner world. A rested person can face uncertainty without panic and delay without despair. Their calm becomes strength. Their stillness becomes resilience. Ultimately, rest is alignment because it places the soul back into its proper rhythm. It reconnects effort with purpose and activity with trust. Rest is not a sign of weakness, it is evidence of wisdom. It shows that a person understands the value of order and the danger of self-reliance. When rest is embraced, life regains balance, clarity returns, and strength is renewed for what truly matters. Mental strain is often the invisible cost of carrying life without faith. The mind becomes overloaded not because it is thinking too much, but because it is thinking without release. Faith provides that release. It does not eliminate thought, it relieves the pressure placed upon it. When faith is active, the mind is no longer required to solve what it was never meant to govern. In this way, faith releases mental strain and restores clarity. Strain develops when the mind attempts to control outcomes, predict every possibility, and secure the future through analysis alone. The human mind is powerful, but it has limits. When those limits are ignored, anxiety grows and clarity fades. Faith intervenes by redefining the mind's role. It shifts the mind from being a controller to being a receiver. This shift immediately lightens the mental load. Faith restores clarity by establishing trust in order. When trust is absent, the mind compensates by overthinking. It rehearses problems repeatedly, searching for certainty where none can be found. Faith breaks this cycle. It allows the mind to release unanswered questions without fear. Clarity returns not because all answers are known, but because the need to know everything is removed. Clarity is not the result of having more information. It is the result of having proper focus. Mental strain scatters attention, causing the mind to jump from one concern to another. Faith centers attention. It narrows focus to what is required in the present moment. When faith is active, the mind stops wandering into imagined futures and unresolved pasts. It becomes anchored in now, where wisdom operates best. Faith also restores emotional balance. Mental strain often comes from emotional overload, fear, worry, regret, and anticipation competing for attention. Faith quiets these competing voices. It brings the heart into agreement with trust. And when the heart is settled, the mind falls. Emotional stability creates mental clarity. When faith releases mental strain, decision-making improves. Decisions made under strain are often reactive and impulsive. Decisions made in faith are thoughtful and aligned. Faith removes urgency that comes from fear and replaces it with patience. This patience allows clarity to surface and direction to become evident. Faith also protects the mind from exhaustion. Continual worry drains cognitive energy. The mind becomes tired not from work, but from carrying weight it was not designed to bear. Faith lifts that weight. It allows the mind to function within its intended capacity. Creativity returns. Insight sharpens. Focus strengthens. Restored clarity also improves perception. Faith helps distinguish between what matters and what does not. Without faith, every issue feels urgent and overwhelming. With faith, priorities become clear. The mind learns to release distractions and concentrate on purpose. Ultimately, faith does not make life simpler. It makes the mind steadier. This steadiness produces clarity. Faith releases mental strain by restoring proper order. When order is restored, the mind operates efficiently, emotions remain balanced, and clarity becomes consistent. Faith does not remove responsibility, it removes unnecessary weight. In doing so, it returns the mind to its rightful state, clear, calm, and focused.